So next we're going to be talking about the Miami Dolphins, what of course we saw a couple weeks ago with the big trade with Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and Mika Fitzpatrick, as well as a late pick they got in return. As well as that, I think the next day, the day after that, they decided to surprise a lot of people and trade for Darren Waller, who the Giants still had his rights to. I think they also gave like a mid to late first, I think it was more so a late round pick for Waller. He unretires. He said that was his only destination he wanted to go to. And it's gonna be very interesting to see what he can be at this point. Given that he is 32 years old, he hasn't really accomplished that much, or has been that player like we saw in Vegas. If you look back to those the big years, 2019 and 2020, Oakland, Las Vegas, and they'll kind of split up with that. Where in 2019 he had 90 catches for over 1,100 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he the next year he goes 107 catches for over 1,100 yards as well, 9 touchdowns, and since then he has not been able to replicate that at all. He's had some decent seasons, but certainly has not lived up to what it was before. 2021, he played 11 games, 55 receptions, 665, 2 touchdowns. And the injuries really the last 2 years playing, I should say, has really caught up to him. Only 9 games in Las Vegas, his last year in 2022, and then they make the big trade to get him in 2023 for the Giants. He only plays 12 games, and he only has 52 catches for 552 yards, 1 touchdown. If you look at his PFF grade for that, it's not horrible stats. I always say, I would throw out there for grades if you buy into it. Overall grade, he was 14th in NFL, so top 15 tight end. I think it means anything, but the tight end position, there's only really the top, very few at the top that really means something after that. It's kind of, I want to say similar like fantasy football, where if you only get the top guys, it's all kind of just, all over the place with it. Receiving grade, he was 10th in the NFL for that. For breaking down where he ranks for targets, receptions, yards, and so forth. He was 17th in the league for targets for 72, 17th in the league for receptions for 52, like we talked about, 16th in the league for 552 yards, and then 32nd in the NFL with receptions for 1. Looking at his advanced stats as well, looking for pass snaps, he was ranked 23rd in that aspect, 22nd in routes ran. He was 4th in drops. He only had 1. So he was really good. He was really good in that. Yards per reception, 14th, and average depth of target, 11th, which 7.9. So again, it's not a absolutely horrible season, but again, for teams that are really banking on that 2019-2020 Darren Waller, that is long gone. To me, it didn't make any sense. And I guess part of it too is, of course, the contract with Jonnu Smith trying to extend it. I'm sure he certainly would be looking for big money. In the next, for really his last opportunity to really get a lot, tons of money, that maybe, certainly it would have been already high enough as it is for what he did, especially last year when really kind of, caught fire towards that, second half of the season, and statistically as well for PFF for rankings, he was elite, if you want to say in the top echelon, with being 4th really all across the board for targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns. It's for me, I think you really just put a downgrade on there. I mean, Jonnu Smith is younger, not that much, but 29, soon to be 30. You have Waller, who had a year off, so maybe he healed his body a little bit more and comes back healthier. But again, what we've seen from Waller last few years, outside of those 2 great seasons, that it just hasn't been enough. And I think it's a puzzling move. I think I applauded them for making the move for the Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. I think that the Steelers were crazy to make that trade, that you kind of bought a stock at the highest point for Jonnu Smith, and there's a high chance it's going to lose its value very quickly, especially with Arthur Smith and how they run the offense. You have Jalen Ramsey, who, yes, is still a good corner, but I think people kind of overhype him too much, and I think some people still believe he's that elite corner. Aging one as well, on top of the money he's receiving is crazy. And I think they still get a good corner, or a good safety in Mika Fitzpatrick, who, of course, funny enough, they originally drafted and traded to Pittsburgh. Where is he the same player he was, first team All Pro? No, but he's still, to me, he's still a really good safety. And if they did a phenomenal job in that move, kind of, if you want to say, stealing the trade for the from the Steelers. But this was kind of a puzzling move for this one. I mean, certainly you got rid of Jonnu Smith. Yes, it was a great move to do that, selling the stock really high. But who's also going to replace him? And I think this was kind of, to me, this was a very puzzling move there, because I think, again, the same thing like the Giants, you're just hoping that you can get that replication of what he did early on, at least close to that. And I just, it's very, I just don't see it. I think it's a weird move. I think you really took a couple steps forward in that trade to really show, kind of shock people, like, wow, Miami actually did this. Like, they pulled this off. And then you kind of took a step back with the Waller trade. And it's just, you're kind of hoping instead of knowing that he is that guy still. And again, we'll see what happens with Darren Waller, but it's very, it's worrisome for the offense that you took away How do you feel about Jonnu Smith? Even though I'm kind of hyping up, saying he's a one season wonder. Really, at this point, he hasn't really had a season like this in years past, and he's on his fifth team, if I have that correctly. So it shows you how other teams view him as a tight end. But yeah, again, even still with that, it's just to me, it's just I don't know. I just don't see. I don't know how Waller's going to fit in with this. I think you're taking away weapons from Tua at this point. Again, you're just more so hoping for that. You still have A-Chain, you still have Tyreek, still have Jalen Waddle, but I think that it really worked out for Jonnu Smith, and who knows, maybe he would have had another great season in 2025 if he would have stayed in the team and had that, I guess the great rapport between him and Tua and Mike McDaniels and how he fit that system. So again, it's gonna be very puzzling. If this does not work out and he has a similar season like he did in 2023 as last year in the NFL, with the Giants, there's gonna be still a lot of questions on top of other things too. Of course, trying to make the playoffs. If they have a losing season or miss the playoffs, that Mike McDaniels might most likely lose his job and then might look for change in a different direction. So there is a lot of pressure all of them already. Of course, they're trying to do a culture change in all this. So again, I think they did a great step forward. Not just McDaniels, but also I think I would assume the GM as well. But he's been there for a long time. But again, I think as a team overall for the franchise, it was a great move for the Dolphins making this step. I think they do also in part have to eat some of the contract for Jalen Ramsey, if I have that right as well. So not 100% amazing, but certainly to get rid of those guys is a good move. And again, if it's a culture standpoint and there was an issue with Jalen Ramsey, you solve the issue, but also you have a bigger issue, in my opinion, with Tyreek Hill, and he's certainly more in the spotlight for the wrong reasons than Jalen Ramsey. But it is what it is. But again, for all things, like I said, if the season's not going well, and you have this on top of it where it's just not clicking, it's not working. It is certainly it's a low risk, but it's also certainly low risk, or sorry, high risk, high reward, if you want to call it. If I can even get to high reward at that point, high risk, medium reward at that point. I mean, if you can replicate what Jonnu Smith did, absolutely, they hit a home run on that one. But if not, if it's 552 yards or 1 or 2 touchdowns, and he's not healthy for he misses a good portion of the season, yes, it's it's certainly going to blow up in their face, and certainly Miami fans are going to look at this and be up in uproar with that. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with the Waller move. Again, very puzzling that they decided to go in this direction, but at this point you felt like it was desperate. They had to bring someone in there into the tight end room to replace Jonnu Smith. I think they already had their option, but also in part that they didn't want to pay Jonnu Smith the money. So we'll see what happens with Darren Waller and the Miami Dolphins, how he fits into that system and how many games he really plays at this point. Again, given the injury history he's had the last few seasons.